The shadowy figures moved with an unnatural grace, their forms twisting and stretching as they closed in. Their presence was suffocating, draining the warmth from the air and leaving only a bone-chilling cold. Samuel stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror. "What are they?" he whispered. "They are not of this world," the woman said, stepping in front of the boys. Her hands glowed faintly, and a ripple of energy radiated from her body. "They are drawn to the power you've awakened." Benjamin's grip on the book tightened. He could feel its pulse, like a living heartbeat in his hands. He glanced at Samuel, who was frozen in fear, and then at the woman. "How do we stop them?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. "You don't stop them," the woman replied. "You survive. The book is the key, but it's also what they seek. You must protect it at all cost." One of the shadowy figures lunged forward, its form solidifying into a monstrous shape with glowing red eyes and clawed hands. The woman raised her arms, and a barrier of light erupted between them, forcing the creature back with a hiss. "Run," she shouted. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." Benjamin hesitated, torn between staying to help and following her command. But Samuel grabbed his arm. "We have to go," he urged, pulling him toward the quarry's edge. "We can't fight them." The boys ran, their footsteps echoing against the stone walls. The sounds of battle raged behind them, shrieks, growls, and bursts of energy that lit up the night like flashes of lightning. Benjamin risked a glance back and saw the woman standing her ground, her glowing form a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness. As they reached the edge of the quarry, Benjamin skidded to a halt. "We can't just leave her," he said, turning back. Samuel grabbed his shoulders, his face pale but resolute. "She told us to run, Benjamin. If we go back, we'll die." Benjamin's chest heaved as he struggled with the decision. The book in his hands seemed to grow heavier, its pulse quickening as if urging him onward. Finally, he nodded, and they scrambled up the rocky slope, leaving the chaos behind. The boys didn't stop running until they reached the dense forest that bordered the village. The shadows of the trees offered a small sense of safety, but the air still felt heavy with danger. They collapsed against a fallen log, gasping for breath. "What was that?" Samuel asked, his voice shaking. "What are those things?" Benjamin looked down at the book in his lap. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think they are connected to this. To whatever power is inside." Samuel ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "This is insane, Benjamin. First the cemetery, then your mom's grave, and now this. How are we supposed to fight something we don't even understand?" Benjamin met his friend's gaze, his expression grim. "We don't fight them. We figure out the truth. That's the only way to stop this." Samuel sighed, his shoulders slumping. "And how do we do that?" Before Benjamin could answer, the book began to glow faintly. The symbols on its cover shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. Benjamin hesitated, then opened it. The pages flipped on their own, stopping on a section he hadn't seen before. The words seemed to rise off the page, forming a shimmering image in the air, a map. Samuel's eyes widened. "Is that a map?" Benjamin said, tracing the lines with his finger. The markings led to a spot deep within the forest, far from the village or cemetery. "It's showing us where to go." Samuel shook his head. "No way. We are not following some creepy map from a cassette book. That's how people die in stories." "Do we have a choice?" Benjamin asked. "Whatever's happening, it's not going to stop unless we figure this out. And this map might be the only clue we have." Samuel hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if we run into more of those things, we are turning back." The journey through the forest was treacherous. The trees grew denser, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Strange sounds echoed around them, rustling leaves, distant howls, and the occasional snap of a twig that made both boys jump. As they followed the map's path, Benjamin couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every so often, he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see one of the shadowy creatures lurking in the darkness. But the forest remained eerily silent. Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone archway, overgrown with vines and moss. Symbols identical to those in the book were etched into the stones, glowing faintly in the darkness. "This is it," Benjamin said, stepping forward. The book in his hands began to vibrate, its glow intensifying. Samuel hung back, his unease growing. "Are you sure about this? That thing looks like the kind of place you don't come back from." Benjamin ignored him, focused on the archway. As he approached, the symbols on the stones began to shift, forming a pattern that matched the cover of the book. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each step. When Benjamin reached the archway, the hum stopped. The air grew still, and the glowing symbols flared brightly. Then, without warning, a portal opened within the archway, a swirling vortex of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with life. Samuel's jaw dropped. "What is that?" Benjamin turned to him, his expression a mix of fear and determination. "I think it's a way to the truth." Before Samuel could respond, a voice echoed from the portal, a voice that made Benjamin's heart stop. "Benjamin, help me." It was his mother. The voice lingered in the air, haunting and filled with desperation. Benjamin froze, his legs trembling. "Mama," he whispered, stepping closer to the glowing portal. The light flickered as if responding to him. Samuel grabbed his arm, his grip firm. "No. Benjamin, don't. This could be a trap." "But it's her voice." Benjamin replied, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "What if she's trapped in there? What if she needs me?" Samuel shook his head, his expression desperate. "Think about this. You saw what happened at the cemetery. That glow, those shadows, they're not normal. What if this isn't really your mom but something pretending to be her?" Benjamin hesitated, doubt creeping into his mind. The book in his hands paused again, its vibrations growing stronger. He looked at Samuel, then back at the portal. The voice came again, fainter this time, as if the distance was growing. "Benjamin, please." He clenched his jaw. "I can't just leave her. I have to know." Samuel's shoulders slumped, his face pale. "Then I'm coming with you." Benjamin's heart ached at his friend's loyalty. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Samuel interrupted, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. "We've come this far together. I'm not letting you go in there alone." Benjamin nodded, his gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. Together, they stepped toward the portal. The glow intensified, enveloping them in its light. The air around them grew thick, pressing against their skin as if resisting their passage. Then, with a sudden rush, the world disappeared. The boys landed hard on a cold, stone floor. The air was heavy with dampness, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. Benjamin groaned, pushing himself up. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking over at Samuel. Samuel sat up, rubbing his head. "I think so." "Where are we?" They were in a vast chamber, the walls carved with intricate symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Pillars rose to a ceiling shrouded in shadow, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal with a single, flickering flame hovering above it. The flame was not like any they'd seen before, it shifted colors, from blue to green to silver, and seemed almost alive. "This place," Benjamin began, his voice trailing off. The book in his hands was glowing brighter than ever, its symbols rearranging themselves once more. A new page appeared, covered in text and diagrams. Samuel peered over his shoulder. "What does it say?" Benjamin scanned the page, his eyes narrowing. "It's instructions for something called the ethereal key. It says it can unlock the barrier between the living and the dead." Samuel paled. "That sounds dangerous." "It also says it's the only way to restore balance and stop the darkness," Benjamin continued, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. "I think this is what the shadows are after. If they get the key, they can use it to bring more of their kind into our world." Samuel swallowed hard. "And what happens if we destroy it?" Benjamin shook his head. "It doesn't say. But if it's the only thing keeping them at bay, destroying it might make things worse." A low rumble echoed through the chamber, and both boys tensed. The shadows from earlier began to seep through the walls, their forms twisting and writhing as they approached. "They found us," Samuel whispered, backing toward the pedestal. Benjamin looked at the flame, then at the book. "We have to protect the key. If they get it, it's over." Samuel nodded, his fear replaced by determination. "What do we do?" The book's glow intensified, and Benjamin felt a surge of energy flow through him. He looked at Samuel, his voice firm. "We fight." The shadows surged forward, their forms solidifying into grotesque, monstrous shapes. One lunged at Samuel, its claws outstretched. He dodged to the side, grabbing a loose stone from the ground and hurling it at the creature. The stone passed through its body harmlessly, but the distraction gave Benjamin time to act. The book in his hands began to hum, and he instinctively opened it to the glowing page. Words spilled from his mouth, unbidden but powerful. The air around him shimmered, and a barrier of light erupted between them and the shadows. The creatures hissed, recoiling from the barrier. But the reprieve was short-lived. The largest of the shadows, a towering figure with glowing red eyes, stepped forward, its presence sending a wave of cold through the chamber. It raised a clawed hand and struck the barrier, cracks forming in the shimmering light. "It's not going to hold," Samuel shouted, his voice filled with panic. Benjamin's mind raced. The book's instructions were clear, they needed to stabilize the flame to activate the ethereal key. But how? He looked at the symbols on the pedestal, then at the diagrams in the book. The markings, he realized. "We need to match them." Samuel glanced at the pedestal, then back at the advancing shadows. "I'll hold them off. You fix the markings." Benjamin hesitated, but Samuel's determined expression left no room for argument. He nodded and ran to the pedestal, studying the symbols. The book's diagrams glowed faintly, guiding his movements. Samuel grabbed another stone, swinging it wildly at the shadows. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice trembling but fierce. One of the creatures lashed out, its claw grazing his arm. He cried out in pain but didn't retreat. Benjamin's fingers moved quickly, tracing the symbols with precision. The flame above the pedestal flickered, its color stabilizing as the markings began to align. "Almost there," he called out. The largest shadow roared, its claws striking the barrier again. This time, the light shattered, and the creature lunged toward Benjamin. "Benjamin, look out!" Samuel screamed. At the last second, Benjamin pressed the final symbol. The flame flared brightly, engulfing the room in a blinding light. The shadows screamed, their forms disintegrating into wisps of smoke. The largest creature let out a final, deafening roar before it, too, vanished. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The flame above the pedestal burned steadily, its colors now a calm, golden hue. Benjamin collapsed to his knees, the book falling from his hands. Samuel rushed to his side, clutching his injured arm. "Are you okay?" Benjamin nodded, his breath ragged. "We did it. The key is safe." Samuel glanced at the flame, then back at Benjamin. "For now. But what happens next?" Before Benjamin could answer, the ground beneath the pedestal began to rumble. A new portal opened, larger and more ominous than the first. From its depths came a voice, deep and commanding. "You've delayed us, but the battle is far from over. The ethereal key is only the beginning." The boys stared at the portal, dread settling in their chest. Whatever lay beyond, it was far more dangerous than anything they'd faced before. To be continued.